Hello everyone and welcome to my European theme park review series. This is something I've very much been looking forward to doing since I got home from our 7-week trip to Europe because there is so much to talk about. Admittedly, like other big coaster YouTubers that have been international, I don't have this flashy high quality video footage to work with, but what I do have is a completely different experience on these places. And the way I want to do these European reviews is I want to go in the order of how I got there, what I rode, what I discovered, and then ultimately give you guys a score out of 10 that will express whether or not I recommend the place. The park we'll be reviewing today, and the first theme park I visited in Europe, is called Legendia Śląskie Wesele Miasteczko. Sorry if I mispronounced that, I don't speak Polish, but I gave it my best go. Now most people just refer to the place as Legendia, which is what I'm going to do for the sake of my well-being. Legendia is a small to medium-sized amusement park located in Chorzów, just outside the city of Katowice in southern Poland. To get here, we flew from the LAX airport in California to CPH airport in Copenhagen, Denmark, before connecting on a flight to the KRK airport in Krakow, Poland. This was our home base during our few days in Poland, and on our first day in the country, we hired a rental car and drove an hour to Legendia. When we got there, I think we were all a little drowsy because we were so jet-lagged that day. Our visit was cut a little short even because we were so tired, and by the time we got back to the hotel in Krakow, we crashed for like a day straight, I kid you not. The only thing keeping me going when we got there was the adrenaline that came with the fact that this was our first European theme park, and it's particularly exciting because they are home to Lech Coaster. Lech Coaster is the park's star attraction. It's located in the back of the park, and it is absolutely one of the most intense roller coasters I've ever been on. We'll touch more on Lech Coaster a bit later, but I definitely want to point out the elephant in the room that is the primary reason to come here. Now, first pro tip is Legendia might be one of the only amusement parks in Europe where I'd recommend buying tickets at the gate instead of online. The way the online ticket system works is you basically buy through a third-party website, so when you get there, they scan a QR code attached to that email. We had purchased 3 online tickets for each member of our group, and only 2 of them showed QR codes, so we eventually had to settle with buying an extra ticket at the park. The staff did try their best to help us, and they were super friendly, but unfortunately there was only so much they could do since it was a third party that we bought it from. For those of you wondering, admission to Legendia will typically run you about 129 Polish zloty, which translates to $30 US. Poland as a whole we found to have very reasonable pricing, and theme parks were no exception. I think $30 US would be exactly what I would have charged if I were running the place. Once inside, you're greeted by this very nice but short main street section with some beautiful architecture. This was a great first impression of the park. It leads to a grand view of the lake the park is built around and the mighty Lech coaster in the background. Legendia's layout basically makes a perfect circle, so you can either go left or right from this point. We chose right, but it doesn't really matter because we were just trying to get to Lech coaster. First takeaway was when we walked past a lot of seemingly abandoned attractions to get there. Like they have this galaxy coaster that's been standing but not operating for years, and a lot of other rides that look so dated. But then you get to Lech Coaster's plaza, which is absolutely stunning. It's well themed, it's modern, the architecture is great. Now granted, Lech Coaster opened in 2017, so it is a fairly new investment, but the more I walked around the park, the more I got the vibe that it was super inconsistent. Some sections of Legendia were beautifully landscaped and themed, and others looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. One nice thing about our visit to the park was that the place was absolutely dead, and we were there on a Sunday. It was nice in that there were no lines for anything, and half the time we were able to just stay in our seats, but on the other hand, I do worry about this place making enough money. Sunday is usually one of the more popular days to visit a park in America, but not here I guess. And maybe it does get more crowded on Saturdays because Sundays weren't particularly busy anywhere in Europe to be fair. I'm not really sure, but Legendia was so deserted to the point where it was actually a little concerning. Anyways, back to Lech Coaster. This ride has gained a lot of notoriety for being one of the first new generation Vekoma coasters to open worldwide. Still, it is the only Bermuda Blitz model ever built, meaning although it's clonable, Lech Coaster in its current state does have a fully unique layout. The ride is absolutely insane because of the pace it takes its elements. I rode this thing a full dozen times throughout my few hours at Legendia, and it was nauseating because of how many G's the thing pulled. At one point, I was even riding it in the rain, and the coaster was absolutely flying. Lech Coaster really is a world-class roller coaster. It was so well built, and by itself, it makes a visit to Legendia alone worth it. But they do have a few other rides we did, including 2 additional roller coasters and a water ride. They have this rare looping coaster manufactured by Soket called Diabelska Petla, otherwise known as Devil's Loop. This is a really weird one because it runs super janky, but it has a layout resembling a Schwarzkopf. You have 2 circular vertical loops which are actually pretty crazy, but everything after that just crawls. One thing that was interesting about this ride though was how they had backwards facing seats in the back row, which of course I had to try. I actually never even got to ride it forwards, but from the ride I got facing backwards, it was pretty uncomfortable but relatively intense. It's one that's definitely worth a ride if you come here, but it didn't stand out to me other than that it was strange. The other operating coaster here also has my favorite name for a ride ever, and it is called Dream Hunters Society. Trust me, I'm just as confused as you are. To ride this one, you need to have both rows of your train filled to prevent the ride from valleying and getting stuck in the middle of the layout, but only my brother and I were there to ride it in the front. So we waited a few minutes for anyone to come up and ride with us, but because the park was so dead, one of the 2 ride operators actually jumped in and rode with us. That sort of thing would never happen in America, but I thought it was pretty awesome. Even though categories of the park are questionable and janky, I did at least think all of the staff were super laid back and very nice. And something I noticed was a good majority of them spoke some English. In other European countries, the language barrier wasn't as much of an issue, but in Poland, it was a little bit more of a struggle. Even at Legendia, which is the big major park in Poland, it could be a little tricky to communicate, but not as much Legendia. Now, the one other ride we did here was this bizarre log flume or shoot the chutes ride. This looked like it hadn't been updated in ages, especially since some of the plants and bushes would literally whack you or the boat during the ride. Also, the splashdowns into the water were like really rough, so I can't say I'd recommend this one. I also remember seeing the super small swinging ride called Giant Water Pump, which was hilarious. Between Dream Hunter Society and Giant Water Pump, I guess Legendia is just the park of weird names. Another peculiar observation I made, and this really goes for Poland as a whole, is the bathrooms had doors separating all of the different rooms. So here there would be a door to enter the bathroom and a room with just sinks, so we're like, okay, where's the urinals? Well, turns out there's another door to access the room with the urinals, which themselves have doors as well. It was just super strange, but in a way I kind of liked the privacy. The only food I bothered to try at Legendia was this gelato towards the front of the park, but it was actually really good, and there was a super friendly girl working there who we got to talk to because she spoke perfectly fluent English. I think she was just excited that some guests finally came up to get gelato. Anyways, Legendia is a pretty unconventional park with a lot of quirks, but it is a generally pleasant time between the fact that the staff are great, the park is clean, and they do have that big standout attraction with the Lech coaster. If they didn't have Lech coaster, I really doubt we would have visited the park, because past that, none of the rides are must-do experiences. In conclusion, I think if Lech coaster weren't here, I wouldn't really recommend coming here, but since it does and it's an incredible ride, it's a park you should definitely visit if you come to Poland. Especially if you were already coming to the country to visit Energylandia, Legendia is only an hour drive away and you're getting a world-class coaster out of it. I think altogether, I'll be giving Legendia a 6.5 out of 10. They are certainly some things this park does well, but since a visit to the place is determined by one amazing ride, I don't think it's fair to give them a higher score. But hey, in my books, anything over a 5 is good, so I'd probably come back at some point just to marathon Lech coaster again. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching episode 1 of my European theme park review series. There's lots of exciting stuff to come, including Energylandia, which is an absolute behemoth in the world of theme parks and roller coasters. If you enjoyed, I'd definitely appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to Coaster Dash for more videos like this in the future. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye guys.
Guys, we are on Lech coaster. This is actually a real thing that's happening.